All right, good afternoon, folks. We're going to go ahead and get started with this community meeting for Old Station, August 15th. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Dan Olson. I am the Information Officer for CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3, assigned to the Dixie Fire West Zone. Today, you're going to be hearing from various speakers to provide you with the latest information pertaining to the fire. The formatting for this will be, we will go through provide you some information. We have a series of speakers, and then we will open it up to a question and answer segment. So with that, I want to start by providing you the latest information we have regarding the Dixie fire incident. Currently, the fire is at 554,813 acres, is 31% contained, and is currently the second largest fire in California's history and still remains the 14th most destructive fire in California's history. We have assigned 6,550 firefighters, 576 fire engines, 198 dozers, 91 crews, and 20 helicopters. To provide you with an operational briefing, I'd like to introduce the Lassen Sector Deputy Operations Section Chief, Kevin Bohall.
Good afternoon, Kevin Bohall, CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3. So I guess first off, we have to lay out how the fire is broken up. CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3 is in charge of the West Zone. California Interagency Team 4 is in charge of the East Zone. As far as the West Zone, we have it broke up into 3 sectors. We have the Butte Sector, the Lassen Sector, and the Westwood Sector. Specifically, I'm in charge of the Lassen Sector, which is north of Highway 36. The areas that I cover specifically are Branch 9, which is the west side of the Lassen sector, Branch 13, which is the north side of the Lassen sector, and Branch 16, which is the east side of the Lassen sector. And what I'm going to do, I'll give you an update kind of going around the horn, and then if you guys have additional questions afterwards, I'll be available for questions. So in Branch 9, specifically, that's starting kind of in the Mill Creek Chester area, from 36 up. We're taking a line from the Blue Lake Road, going up to the proposed wilderness boundary, and then hand line to Highway 89. That's the control effort we're going for there. That's specifically in Division Lima. We also have, a few days ago, we had some new starts from lightning with some of the weather events that we've had. Those 2 new starts are the L1 fire and the L2 fire. The L2 fire is contained. The L1 fire is up on Morgan Mountain. It's actually at the top of Morgan Mountain, steep, rugged terrain, currently about 12 acres. One side of that fire is extremely steep and inaccessible, so they're having challenges holding the one side of the fire on the downhill side because it's kind of like a bowling alley. It's trying to roll down to the meadow below. But we have that staffed with crews, and we're utilizing aircraft on that fire. As you go around the horn, we're also looking for opportunities and taking suppression action within Lassen National Park. Some of the opportunities there include hand line and dozer line, depending on where we're at. The areas that are approved for dozer line, specifically, are on the north side of the park near the north entrance. Tying in there, we've been working with the Hat Creek Ranger District, and we're taking dozer line around the north side of the park out in forested land between there and Highway 44, which is actually south of Old Station. Taking that over to the Butte Lake Road. When you come into Branch 16, where the connection is there, we're over by the Caribou Wilderness. We actually have direct fire line from Silver Lake to the A21 road, down the A21 road into Westwood. The piece, the 10 road that goes north of Silver Lake, going back around to Butte Lake, we're actually doing mastication and improving the road there to utilize that as a control line, and then plan on taking hand line to Butte Lake to the fantastic lava flow. Within the park, once we make the connections on the west and east side of the fire, we're looking for opportunities to take hand line from Highway 89 over to Snag Lake and back up to Butte Lake. Communities that are currently evacuated because of some of the operations we're doing, Mill Creek and Camp Tehama, we pulled an evacuation a few days ago, specifically because of the L1 fire and the potential that that fire could threaten that community. Currently, we're in an evacuation warning for the town of Mineral. Westwood and Chester are still currently evacuated. And Old Station obviously is an area that we have that we want to make sure that we take appropriate action if the fire does that are coming out on the north side of the park. End report.
Thank you, Kevin. And again, we will be answering those questions. Should you have any operational questions, once we complete the speaker component, then we will be happy to field those questions. Our next speaker is your supervisor for District 3, Mary Reichert.
I just want to let all of you know that I'm here. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Either call the office. A lot of you have my personal cell phone. I know Joanne Moore. For those of you that know Joanne, she can track me down easily. I have been in contact with our county fire chief, Brett Govea, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and he's been keeping me apprised of what's been going on with the fire. So if anybody has any questions or needs any facilitation within the county system, please don't hesitate to contact me at any time. I know what it is to be in this situation. My husband and I lost about 500 acres this year in Siskiyou County to the tenant fire. When you're trying to be a rancher and they eat your feed in a drought year, it's a tough year. So I understand how rough it is this year. So if anybody has any questions or anybody has anybody that they want me to try and get them in contact with, do not hesitate to call me, and I'm here for you. So thank you. And let's keep praying. That's all I can say.
For our next speaker, it'll be National Park Service Superintendent, Jim Richardson.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Richardson. I've been the park superintendent at Lassen Park for 4.5 years. I was not here during the Reading fire in 2012, but I was working at Whiskeytown at the time, and we sent staff from Whiskeytown up to that fire. I have read the entire fire review. I know exactly what happened. For those of you who are paying attention, this fire is setting up to potentially be some of the similar results from that fire. So don't know exactly how the weather will hold, but certainly the fire fuels are even more receptive than they were back then. So the fuels themselves will continue to carry this fire in this direction. So in the national park, we have been seeing this coming. We saw it coming about 10 days before it actually hit the park. And we started doing preparations on our southern boundary at our resources at risk, and started immediately identifying and discussing opportunities to build fire line and to stop the fire. I'll make it clear, our goal here is to stop the fire. So those opportunities have been passed on to the fire team, who I and the other agency leads have delegated our authority to that fire team, this integrated fire team, to actually do the fire suppression. That's what we're doing. We are suppressing this fire. So we're identifying those locations that make sense, and then we'll see what Mother Nature throws at us. We'll do our very best to stop this fire. I know many of you have questions. I'll be happy to answer questions during the question and answer time, or I will stay here till every last person has their questions answered one-on-one. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Hat Creek District Ranger, Robin Wall.
Thank you. I am glad to see all of you here today. I thought it would just be a small meeting, but no, the community has come out in droves, and I appreciate you being here. As Kevin said, we looking for appropriate ways to take action, and the last National Forest did take action. Thank you. with Force Order 06-21-08, which expanded the forced closure order because of the Dixie fire. And this area is in the old station area, south of 44, east of 89. It closed all the facilities, et cetera, the recreation facilities, which included the trails portion of the PCT, the campgrounds, Subway Cave, Hat Creek Campground, et cetera. Areas north of 44, which would include the Hat Creek Overlook, is still open. The campgrounds north of 44 are still open. One is still open, I should put it, Bridge. Bridge is still open. So that's the only campground that's open on the Hat Creek District. So, like I say, taking preparedness, this is for the health and safety, to make sure that folks aren't in the campgrounds or recreating in the local area in case we do need to move people on or check on folks. So having the folks out of recreation in this area is very important, and it's part of this preparedness. And I know it may be an inconvenience for you. It is summer and you'd like to recreate and enjoy this area, but it's important for us to make sure that the health and safety of this community as well as our visitors that come here. Again, I'm the Hat Creek District Ranger, and my office is in Fall River Mills, and I'll leave some business cards up front, and you can always call the Hat Creek District and talk to me. So if there's any questions, I guess we'll have a question and answer time, but I thank you again for being here. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Hat Creek FMO, Shannon Prather.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Shannon Prather. I'm the fire management officer here on the Hat Creek Ranger District. Been here since 2016 and took over this FMO duties last year. I've been working in unified manner on this fire for 30 days now, since the beginning of this fire. Went down to Chico to work with CAL FIRE Team 1 as the Unified Incident Commander for about 3 weeks. And CAL FIRE Team 3 has come in, and I just want to say we remain in unified command with Jay Lusher from the Park Service as our unified federal IC. We're working very closely with the team. My primary mission at this point here on the district is the protection of Old Station right now, okay? So I'm working very closely with operations, with our staff to identify lines that we could open up to keep the fire out of Old Station. I'll reiterate though that our primary focus is and always will be life, property, and then resources, and in that order, okay? So we're doing everything we can to keep this fire out of this community. That being said though, this fire has the potential to run 115,000 acres in one day, and it's no joke out there. I said about 2 weeks ago that we were going to have a few rough days ahead of us. Well, I'm a little bit afraid that this smoke conversion and the cap is giving us a little false security on what this fire and the potential is. So just be aware that if that moment comes and we ask you guys to be in a warning status, to be ready. That means be ready if that comes. We're not close to that yet, but the fire has that potential. And if we ask you guys to evacuate, please, it's so that these guys can come in and protect your homes and do the job that needed to do. And if we get deterred that we have to protect life instead of a home, we will. We will do everything we can to protect life first. Right? You know, if you're in the way of us saving your home, we're going to save you instead. But these guys are professionals. They know what they're doing, and we're going to do everything we can to make that not happen. But the potential is out there, and we're not going to tell you a story that everything's going to be hunky-dory. But I'm doing everything within my power, and will continue to do everything within my power to work with the team to get the resources we need to put the lines in the areas that we need those lines to be in. And so I'll leave my cards also on the table here. A lot of you know my predecessor, Debbie, but I'm the new district FMO, and you guys feel free, anyone, to call me anytime if you've got questions or concerns about fuels management. If you want to know, what we're doing to make this community safe, I'd be happy to talk with any of you about that. So thank you very much, and have a good day.
Our next speaker is CAL FIRE Incident Team 3 Incident Commander, Chief Billy C.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to see a big turnout. Obviously, this incident started over 30 days ago, 550,000 acres. Just to put that in perspective, it's about 490 miles around the perimeter of this incident so far. That's going from basically Susanville to Boise, Idaho, if you're walking in a straight line. Obviously, none of the areas that we're fighting fire in are highway areas. That's rugged, steep terrain, difficult for the firefighters to work in. This incident has impacted a total of 5 counties now, 2 national forests, and a national park. Multiple timber stands out there with multiple timber companies, and some Bureau of Land Management cultural resources for our Native Americans. Lots of devastating destruction has occurred. Multiple communities have been impacted. We have multiple evacuations. I think up near 29 to 30,000 people still evacuated. We've damaged nearly 1,400 homes, but we've saved more than has been damaged and or destroyed. We're taking aggressive actions with firefighter and public safety as our number 1 concern. Number 2 concern is making sure we point protect all our community and critical infrastructure that's out there. It's a big monster out there right now. Just in the West Zone alone, we have broken up into 3 different sectors with an operations section chief in each of those sectors. It's a big task. It's been a lot of continuity of operations out there, common operating picture with the East Zone, ensuring that we're operating with one mission and one goal in life. We have multiple agency administrators representing the Lassen National Forest, Plumas National Forest, the Lassen National Park, 4 CAL FIRE administrative units, and it's just a lot of work out there. We're dealing with multiple sheriff's departments for each of the respective impacted counties at this point. This fire crossed into Shasta County 2.5 days ago. They're at the Plumas-Shasta County line, just below Juniper Lake. And we're just watching the fire history, taking action where we can take action when it's appropriate. And we've been looking at the lines that were put in on the Reading fire in 2012. And we're starting to open those lines back up. So there's some critical infrastructure on West Prospect Peak for the communications of the Shasta County Sheriff's Department, and we want to make sure that communications link is maintained. That's some of the critical infrastructure. Obviously, I asked to have this meeting up here just because of the concern and looking at the growth of this fire, so we could keep you informed and start getting the information out in this area. There's a lot of concern in this room. I understand that. We're doing the best we can. The firefighters are working long hours. We've gained success each day. They may be small wins, but we've gained success. Mother Nature has not played fair with us. We're in for some rough waters over the next couple of days. We have red flag warnings coming probably on Tuesday for high winds. We have a cutoff low coming out of the north on us. So the wind pattern's going to change. There are going to be heavy winds. Just to put the field bed in perspective, and you've heard how aggressive this fire's burned over the course of the last 30 plus days, but we've been anywhere from 90 to 100% ignition component. So if you took 100 matches and dropped it in this field bed, each match would start its own fire. That's how receptive this field is. This is 20 years of drought impacting all these forests here in Northern California. It has had $1 billion worth of damage done to the timber industry so far, just this incident. Let alone you look at the magnitude of the incidents in Northern California just over the past 5 to 10 years. That's the livelihood of Northern California. We all understand that. We're working in hand with those timber companies, and we're trying the best we can to save those natural resources and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So moving forward, we're going to do the question and answer segment. We do have a representative from Shasta County Sheriff that's also on hand to assist with any of those questions. So for formatting, what I'd like to do is just start on the right-hand side of the room. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll work our way back over to the left side of the room. If we can't get that question in terms of hearing it, I'll repeat the question, and then we'll bring the appropriate speaker up to assist in providing you that answer. All right, sir, I saw your hand go up first, and then I'll come this way.
What exactly are you doing in the park? What are you allowed to do in the park?
I believe the question is, what exactly are we doing in the park and what we're allowed to do in the park? So with that, I'll turn that over to our park superintendent, Jim Richardson.
So as I mentioned earlier, we have identified to the teams opportunities for control points. There aren't really any roads except for the park highway, which runs north and south. There aren't really any east and west road control points, but there are trail control points. So what we have done is we are on the park highway, we are masticating along the park highway. I think there's 13 very big masticators working the park highway, getting that ready to burn off of. And then we have 2 trail systems that connect, one from the south that connects up to some Forest Service roads, and that would intersect onto the park highway. And then another one that goes from Summit Lake essentially up to Butte Lake. And those are trail systems. The problem there is the resources to do those are hand resources, crew resources, and those are very, very rare. And so we're looking for those. Those have started, but I hope they complete those by the time that they are able to be used. And then up to the corner of the park, there's a short corner that connects to Lassen National Forest in that road system. That's actually less than a mile. So I've already authorized use of dozer line and cutting that to be a wide tree path and then to burn off of that. So that is essentially, that's the funnel point that was a problem in the Reading fire as well, and saw that coming right away. So the critical spots have been identified and approved in advance. Don't know exactly what Mother Nature will throw at us, but I think there's a good chance that that can work.
Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. One, John Parrish can help me on this, maybe. I live on Clearbrook Drive, which is off the paved portion of Sugarloaf. And last night at 8 o'clock, I was on my front porch looking at a huge pyroclastic type plume up in the sky. It went way above the smoke line that we've seen for days and days. Can anybody tell me what that was?
All right, yes, ma'am. Obviously, being specific where it actually came from is going to be very difficult, but there's a lot of fuel loading out there in the forest, and the timber has a tendency to, once it is burning, it may not be moving, but it's sitting there just chugging away. Basically, it creates a lot of heat, and there's upper level moisture in the atmosphere, which then creates that type of mushroom cloud that you saw, a pyrocumulus cloud. So it's the upper moisture with the amount of heat on the ground, and once that heat rises and hits that moisture, it creates that plume cloud that looking like that.
It looked like the plume that I saw 2 or 3 days earlier, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that I swear was Greenville going up.
So I can tell you honestly, someplace on this fire, about 4 o'clock to about 9 o'clock every day, we have some type of large cloud formation above it because of the amount of heat that's being generated on the forest floor.
days ago, maybe a week and a half ago, I had a gentleman from CAL FIRE that knocked on my door and wanted to know who owned the property next to me. The cattle ranch that the Bidwells leased the land from, the folks that owned it, that I'm not sure who, but they were talking about the possibility of using the pasture across from me as a helicopter drop and a place to mix chemicals to be dropped on the fire. What has happened with that? Any information at all?
So what we do, we send out scouts to start looking in anticipation of growth of the fire. We look anywhere 5 to 7 days out, and we want to have everything set up and be ahead of the game and not be behind. So if we needed to institute something up here, we already have it pre-planned on where it would go. And then from there, once we hit a decision point, that's when we start moving equipment in and getting that set up so we're able to fight the fire effectively and efficiently without being behind the 8 ball.
So is that a go at this point?
No,
Would we know?
not as a go, just as of yet.
Okay, I have one more question. My dog went that way. Does anybody got him?
Can we please assist this lady with the recapturing of her dog, please?
He's outside?
First of all, compliment. Prior to retirement, I've had many opportunities to work collaboratively with CAL FIRE's Incident Command Team. I gotta tell you, you guys are the best. You've always been the best. The last 4 or 5 nights I've watched your whole organizational structure. It's second to none in the world, and I know that other organizations throughout the world come to you and learn from you. So thank you, not only for you guys, but everybody that's out there on the line. It's a tough job.
Thank you for the compliment.
Having said that, I guess I have 2 questions. First of all, when can we in Old Station actually expect to see defensive strike teams in here defensively as the fire gets closer? What's the demarcation point? At what point will we see those kinds of teams in Big Spring, Sugarloaf, and Old Station proper as we have in the past? That's the first question.
Okay, so for those folks in the back, did you guys copy that question? When will we start seeing resources arrive in this location for a preparation component? And Chief C will answer that question.
So obviously, we've been looking at many priorities on this incident. There's many communities that have been endangered for quite some time, and we've been focusing a lot of effort on that. We've been watching this north end closely and developing contingency plans, looking at previous fire history up here and starting to open those lines up. Some of the stuff I've been looking at, just going at this over the last couple of days as we've watched this fire progress north through the park and through the Caribou Wilderness, is looking at the 09 and 10 road up there and looking in that general direction that on where we're opening stuff up. As we start to look at fire encroaching those areas, you'll start to see structured defense assets moved into this north part up here in preparation for a potential firefight. I don't want to be here. Let me put it clear. I don't want to be here. And when I say I don't want to be here, that's our entire organization, all our agency administrators collectively.
We don't want you up here either.
Understood. But, and I know there's a lot of concern out there, and there's differences of opinion on management and everything else. There's a lot of similarities between all the agencies that are cooperatively working together right now. So in turn, I'll use an old saying from an old chief officer of mine. We're going to maximize our similarities for the effort we put forward, and we're going to minimize our differences.
Thank you. My next question kind of goes back to what Diane Snodgrass just mentioned, but I would just like some reaffirmation of what I heard from, I believe his name is Jim. So in the past, we have seen the National Park System do control burns, and they've slowly crept out of control. And then they mentioned that they have a policy to where they allow burns to burn as long as they think they can control it. And our experience has been that sometimes doesn't always work out for us. And at the last 3 or 4 briefings, I've heard the fire suppression folks say they are working collaboratively with the Park Service, utilizing their rules and regulations in the park. And I'm just curious, what is the difference between what those rules and regulations are versus CAL FIRE, when in my opinion, we've got a massive out-of-control fire? Shouldn't we just be stopping the fire altogether and not have special rules or regulations in the park?
And for that question, I'll go ahead and defer to our superintendent.
So the rules essentially are set by Congress. So if you can picture way back before the volcano erupted, this was the area that the park is in was national forest. And then when the volcano erupted, Congress decided, ooh, there's a special area. We're going to do some extra protections. And of course, that's become one of our most important economic bases here is the national park. And then a few years after that, they decided this is a really special, really wild wilderness place. And they declared most of Lassen wilderness. As they did then a few years later with the caribou wilderness in the national forest. So those rules, yes, are different. But the big thing to think about is where are those fire control points with what's there? And so both the forest and the park and the communities, including the private timber owners, they help identify where those control points could be. And then it is up to the integrated incident command to pick that and put the resources on that to make that a reasonable line. And that's exactly what we have done in the park. That's what the forest has done on their forest lands, including their wilderness lands. And I'm just certain at every point along the way, we will identify those things, and we know what those rules are, those rules of engagement. Some of those I can suspend during time of emergency. For instance, I've authorized dozers where dozers make sense, authorized use of chainsaws in the wilderness where that makes sense. And all we can do is respond to what's in front of us.
A follow-up question. So tell me if the news reports are false, which sometimes they are. Supposedly Doug LaMalfa and a few other congressmen in the state of California have sent messages to President Biden's administration that what's going on and that the park rules are somewhat inhibited, as we're discussing. And Biden supposedly said he was going to sign an executive order, as reported in the newspaper. I don't really believe it, but what I read was he's going to sign an executive order saying stop all fires, pure suppression, put them out. Have you heard that at all?
I have not heard that at all, but we're implementing that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And sir, we got Mr. Bullhall here who's been on that line. He's been on that front and working in that area. So if you don't mind, I'd like to take a minute to provide him an opportunity to kind of tell you folks, he's that guy on the front line. He's coordinating all that. And I think he can provide some in-depth perception as far as what's occurring out there.
Yeah, so there's probably 2 answers to that question. The first one is this is a full suppression incident. We're not considering any sort of management or anything like that. The goal is to put the fire out. We are considering any appropriate action regardless of whose property it is. Understand that. The big thing that's driving what we're doing for suppression action is the location of the fire right now. We have to get the western and the eastern flanks tied into wherever we're going to go into the park before we can start working the part in the center. And the reason being is steep and inaccessible terrain, fuel conditions, and weather conditions. The weather conditions that we're getting currently because of the lack of snowpack is much more extreme than we typically, or excuse me, the fire conditions are much more extreme than we typically would get in this fuel type at this elevation because of the lack of snowpack this year. That's a huge consideration. We talked about the 100 matches going across the line and the 100 matches taken off. Spot fires are much, much more difficult to contain or suppress than we typically would have at this elevation in this fuel type. So all those things are consideration in where we're putting line. The overview that I gave you guys is the current plan. That plan is going to be dictated by weather conditions. We do have adverse weather coming in the next couple days. A southwest flow with a very dry air mass. That sort of stuff is the stuff that obviously you could put a 100 blade wide dozer line in front of that and it's not going to stop that fire. We've had instances like this prior down by Highway 36 when we had the 100,000 acre run. I believe that it was on, anyway, it was a few weeks ago. So those fuel conditions, the weather conditions, and the terrain are really what dictating what type of suppression action we're taking.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Let me get the microphone to you and then we can.
I don't need a mic.
Okay.
How many evacuees to Chester? Any news on repopulation?
Yes, sir.
All right, so welcome. And
I've been here for 10 days.
yeah, I apologize that you're evacuated. I can go to the big map right here. Obviously, the Chester area is almost like an island in the middle of the fire right now. The Chester, the 36 corridor up to Westwood. It's in between the mouth right now on both sides. Lake Almanor split this fire in two and pushed one edge this way and one edge this way. We have to get the safety features along Highway 36 and all the hazard trees and everything else. Make sure we have power, water going in there, and we will get people back at home as soon as possible. The last thing I want to do is keep folks out of their homes. I want to get them back as soon as possible. If it hadn't been for the wind the other night, we had a plan to start repopulating that Highway 89 corridor coming down in there. So that's what I'm at.
I have a follow-up question. There's a rumor floating around in the Chester evacuees that this last big push, 36, 813 to Westwood, was caused by a backburn in the city. Is that true or not?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, that the push in this section right here was created by a backburn. That, as far as I know, that is incorrect. We actually had to take defensive firing at the causeway to prevent the forward spread of the fire there defensively. The fire came out in the wind and pushed. We were extremely concerned about Westwood, the peninsula, and going back into Chester on a reburn when that occurred in that wind. There were several resources we had to take off of other priority areas just to protect that infrastructure and hold Highway 36. I brought in 25 additional engines the next morning from CAL FIRE just to make sure I put an army on 36 to prevent a southern spread of that. Thank God the winds didn't come in and we didn't have a problem the next day, but I do have the resources for the next 2 days of the wind events that we're facing.
So let me understand that you don't have a tentative date for going back into Chester.
We have to get 36 buttoned up, and that's what we're working on right now. With the wind pattern that we anticipate in the next 2 days, I have fire in Duffy Creek here, which puts Susanville in line. I have fire down at Antelope in the east zone, which puts Janesville in line. Anytime that wind pattern hits at 25 miles an hour, that can rapidly change conditions and move that fire into any of those communities. As well as, I have fire in the Caribou Wilderness here just outside the park.
All right, as we work our way across the room, yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Shorey, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are here, and obviously by the group. it was time. I'll make one general comment, and I'll go into my questions. I'll probably be for Chief Bohall and the Park Superintendent. You guys can tag team. On the morning briefings and in the community evenings at night, Chief Brunton basically says, we have a plan and we're working with the park, but no additional information. So I know all of my neighbors come to me, I'm a retired CAL FIRE guy, and they go, what does that mean? And I say, I don't know. So I wrote a question several meetings ago, it didn't get answered last night. But I think if you would go into just a smidgen more depth, maybe you'd have less people here with a better understanding and maybe more heartfelt feelings towards you. Okay? So with that, I'm going to start off on some questions. The line in the wilderness that's going to connect up into 89, is that a missed line or is that a full-blown hand line? Just some of these you both are going to have to answer, so you both might as well just stand up there and decide who's going to answer.
All right, putting me on the chopping block here. That's actually going to be hand line. We can utilize tactics. That area has been approved for chainsaws. So we're utilizing that. And we can also utilize hose, water, and we can also use water dropping helicopters.
So the line that is started now, how far is that to bare dirt? Are we talking 6 feet, 10 feet? What's the
it's appropriate depending on the fuel type. So it changes. Most of it's going to be a minimum of 2 feet, depending on what we got going.
So is the 2 feet grass, or is it, that sounds more like a mist technique line to me, which in my experience has been terribly unsuccessful.
Well, we're utilizing the appropriate tactic for the fuel type that the line's in.
Okay. On the Highway 89 line, you're using masticators. How far out are you able to go to basically make a fuel break in there?
Typically the masticators mostly are excavator masticators, so they can go as far as the boom can reach on the steeper stuff. The stuff that isn't as steep, we can use skid steer masticators, and we can go quite a bit further.
So you're allowing them off the paved highway and off into the dirt?
Mostly within the park. Most of it's steep enough that it's typically excavator masticators.
Okay. Superintendent, is it Richardson?
Yes.
Okay. You said that your goal is to stop the fire and that you've authorized dozers in certain areas. Did that include, did you say the dozers were allowed in the wilderness? In my clarification?
No, I have not. We have not identified any spots where there have been appropriate use of dozers in the wilderness, but where we have identified need for line that is outside the wilderness where dozers would work, I've authorized that.
Okay, so right now your basic primary line is Highway 89.
The primary line, well, I'm not sure the definition that the unified team is calling 89, but
I think Chief Bohall can answer that for us.
Yeah, so primarily, what we're looking for here is we have to figure out how we're going to get into the park. We have the line going on the south end of 89 and the piece on the northeast side going through the Caribou Wilderness. We have to make that connection before we decide how we're going to tie in 89.
Okay, and I'm just, in my mind, I'm trying to figure out how you can get across there too, and I don't have a great idea. So, Superintendent, if we carry that, if the fire carries all the way to 89, based on looking at a map, we're going to carry fire to about 60% of the park. Is that accurate?
I think that's about accurate, yes.
So how do you think that's going to affect your visitors next year? Wouldn't it be better to try and go direct today, utilize and plead from additional delegation of authority that you've given to the team to make that happen, if they're supposed to go direct today?
Yeah. We need control features to do that. There are potential features. There are previous fires. There are lakes and streams and whole cinder fields that are almost no vegetation. So there are opportunities, but we're only going to go after, the team is only going to go after those that have a reasonable chance of success.
So would you be in favor of putting dozers on the south side of Badger Flat to connect the reading fire and over?
Nobody has suggested that as a good tactic at this time, and Badger Flat is not the place that has been identified as the place to catch the fire. But the trail system essentially that goes from Summit Lake to Butte Lake That's the core of the, that interior wilderness line.
Okay, and then the fire had been checked from Juniper up towards Snagwick. Now looking at the latest IR flight, it's blown out of there big time. So I think that's going to carry a long ways. Is it going to hurt? You know, can we hold 89 or not when it kind of curves left and comes up the hill?
It is. It's moving west towards the Park Road. We expected that.
So are there any aircraft restrictions in the park currently? Can we fly retardant in the park?
Can we fly? What was that?
Can we drop retardant, fire retardant in the park?
They would have to ask permission for that in the wilderness. So in our fire management plan, that's what that says. It would have to
ask for permission today. What would your answer be?
It would have to make sense on the resource that they were trying to do, whether they were trying to strengthen a line, protect a resource, a specific resource. Otherwise, it'd be water.
Okay, so you're fully capable, if we have the 215s or the coppers, just to lay water in there, check things up as appropriate, not to waste the water or the resource, but in support of their operations, you'd be okay with that?
Oh, absolutely. That's being done daily.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you for your time.
All right, folks, as we continue across the room, yes, ma'am. Let me get the microphone to you so that the general consensus can hear.
Thank you. I am a retired, but I have to take notes. I'm a retired budget manager from a very large government agency. So I do recall the resources. It took me years ago, what's a resource before I became a budget manager in that field? It's the money. It's the personnel. That kind of thing. We used to call it the color of money, the pots of money, and it does come from the government, whether it's state, whether it's federal. The best thing we as citizens can do is to contact your local representatives and say, hey, we need more money allocated to take care of the slash along the road and this and that. And be a pest. Be a huge pest. And sometimes it takes a while to get that old wheel moving. And we personally thank you all for how you are managing those resources and trying to keep us all safe.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Let me get the microphone to you so we can all hear the question.
Is the Sheriff's Department representative still here?
Yes, ma'am. Let me get him up here, and you can go ahead and ask your question, and we'll bring him forth.
Thank you. I had some minor vandalism and robbery at my local business. It's all been minor, but I'm really nervous to evacuate if the time comes. What is going to be done if we all leave to keep our homes safe once we're not there with our dog and our gun?
Yes, our standard procedure is once we evacuate an area, we backfill that area with security teams. So there's constantly patrol deputies that are dedicated to just the fire to run in these evacuated areas and provide security for residences and businesses in that area.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say I've been listening to your online live presentations the whole time. They are very informative. I realize that you have significant communication gaps because of the nature of the Intermountain area. But I just thought I'd say, first off, that watching those has given us a lot of information, just like today. And I think that it is very impressive. I come from the city, so, I think this kind of organization over this kind of landscape, amazing. So I wanted to say that and say thank you for all of that. These as communication tools are pretty good. The other thing I wanted to ask is my training is in safety, so I tend to look at worst case scenario for myself. So I've pretty much evacuated already most of my stuff. And in that you mentioned, I think in the beginning, that there was you have a publication. Does that describe what we need to do if we lose our homes and we're evacuated and stuff like that? Is all of what we need to do covered in that publication?
Yes, sir. And if you would tie in with me afterwards, and I'll go through that with you. But for the betterment of the group, as well as those that are going to be watching online, obviously, we discuss our communication and the challenges that we've had. A lot of challenges with the internet and connectivity. And I hate to say it, but for us as Incident Management Team 3, this isn't our first go-around with this. We were here for the hog fire, and we got kicked in the gut twice when it came to trying to utilize internet. The fiber optic cable burned, I'm sure you folks remember that, and then we got kicked in the gut again in regards to that. And we fall back on the fundamental values and the rudimentary of getting our folks out there, and you folks have probably heard me say it. It's a handshake in 2 minutes of your time. That we're providing to you folks, which is why we're here. I have a dozen field PIOs that are scattered throughout all the 4 and 5 counties. And their job is to get that information up on the boards so that we can communicate with you. I've got another 10 on order that I'm waiting to get, and as soon as I do, I'm gonna distribute them out in the field, because right now we can't put all our eggs in that internet basket. So I appreciate the kind words. We are trying to utilize technology, but we all know that I can't rely on that 100%. So we're falling back on the old-fashioned, or as Chief says, we have to go old school. And so we're doing that, and we're getting those folks out there. If you see them, that is their job, and they'd be happy to assist you folks in anything you need. If you need an update, if you need assistance with something, that's what we're here for. All right?
First of all, I wanted to just let you all know that you guys are in our prayers and in our thoughts all the time. And to just
Thank you, sir.
So another question I have would be for the superintendent. And that would be, going forward, what would be the fear of dead trees, removing dead trees from the old burn scars?
So the question is, what would be the theory of taking down the trees that have already burned from pre-existing fires and that are currently residing in burn scars?
So in certain places, that would be reasonable. In fact, we have identified a long time ago that in particular the Park Road corridor, which is not in wilderness, would be a place where we could do that. So we have sought funding for that. We didn't successfully compete for that funding. The first step actually is getting environmental compliance done on that. So we know those steps, and we are working on that step really first. But we would not be going in the wilderness area to cut down trees just to cut down dead trees. But in the road corridor or near facilities for protection, we would do that. And potentially also for ecological benefit where that makes sense, in particular in our meadow areas that you can see is like if you drive the Park Highway.
All right. There you go, Rob. And then we'll get you next, ma'am. I promise. We're not going anywhere.
Thank you. I've heard you talk about being here for Old Station, should the time come. What circumstances would you foresee for the need to go west toward Shingletown, Railwood, Manton, work in Shingletown, and been watching this really closely, but what would you see, like weather-wise, where we might need to start really being cautious and think about needing to evacuate?
So the question is, what are those trigger points, or we refer to them as action points, to make that collective decision? And with that, I'm going to let Chief C go ahead and reply.
Obviously, that's going to be a difficult question to answer. We're going to have some type of weather anomaly that has a driving, southeast wind that wants to push it that direction. There's a lot of landscape features the fire will slow up and will give us time to be able to allow the people that live in those areas sufficient time to evacuate. I can't promise you that this fire is going to go out until Mother Nature puts it out. We have faced dramatic weather changes every 3 to 5 days since the start of this fire. Wind is our enemy when it comes to these wildland fires, and then drought is another enemy. We're living with effects of over 20 years of drought that's impacted all the forests here in the Northwest. And just this last year, 0 snowpack up and down this state, numerous fires last year. We saw the field beds ignite and grow tremendously last year, and we're seeing the same effects this year, compounded with the lack of rainfall and snowpack that we had this last year. So truthfully, to answer your question, Shingletown on a large scale map is on our radar, but I'm not paying attention to that right now. I'm paying attention to the gun sights of where this thing's aimed based on the current weather patterns that we see 96 to 120 hours out.
All right, ma'am. We'll get the microphone over to you here in just a second. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. The trigger point on the east zone is going to be Antelope Lake that comes around each side and starts pushing down the escarpment. What's the trigger point for Old Station? I know you're saying it's weather, but do you have any idea what we would consider a trigger point to look at a heat map? And in case, we don't have computer technology or anything, connectivity at any time.
I'm looking at the 09 Road and 10 Road. That's what I'm looking at right now. That's when we'll start pushing resources in up here.
09 and 10 Road doesn't mean anything to me. Is that a Forest Service road?
It is a Forest Service road, but they're main thoroughways that some of the timber companies have widened and utilized, so they're main roadways, and we're already...
Got like a 34 and 09 in front of it, right?
Yes. It's a Forest Service road. Sorry, Jeff, I'm shortening it up a little bit here. But copy that. But obviously, that's a trigger point to start pushing resources into this area and start prepping. And if the fire were to start to make a move towards that direction, that's when we work with the Sheriff's Department on evacuation warnings and then watch how this is progressing and potentially go into evacuation order. But that will be a recommendation from all of us to the Sheriff's Department, with the final decision being the Sheriff's Department. But we work hand in hand in coordination and make sure that we give plenty of time to get folks out.
Okay, I have another question regarding critical need resources. How short are we on critical need resources nationally? And I'm an old Forest Service dispatcher, so I'm like, I know we have critical need every single day. X amount of type 1 crews, X amount of type 2 crews, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not seeing any of that information come down anywhere. And we don't have an area command up here. So how are critical needs being delegated, actually?
Okay, so the utilization of resources on these incidents are prioritized utilizing a score sheet out of the North Geographical Operations Center, North. I'm trying not to talk fireman language here. But what they do, they look at the critical values, the needs of each incident, what the incidents are asking for, and then they prioritize based on type of resource and equipment, whether it's a hand crew, engine, so forth, and they prioritize it, and then they divvy it out. I can tell you, and you heard from Shannon, he's at 56% here in Region 5 of available resources to be staffed because he has such a vacancy rate. CAL FIRE, I can tell you I have about 350 engines in the state. I have 127 on this incident right now. I have 1/3 of the resources from CAL FIRE engines on this incident. And then we have our partners at Office of Emergency Services, OES, and we have a significant amount of local government master mutual aid that's up here and assisting. It's a collaborative effort. Used to, a singular department or singular agency could manage and extinguish these fires. Today, it's a joint effort amongst everyone. And I need you to understand that. And that includes all of you. It's a joint effort of all. It's not one agency that can do this anymore with the complexities.
All right, as we move towards the left side here of the room, is there any additional questions? Yes, ma'am, I see your hand in the back.
Two quick questions. One is, if we should evacuate on a specific direction from the sheriff's, do you want us to leave like a note in the window facing the road showing that we vacated so the sheriffs don't have to come to the door knocking?
So the question is, if they should they evacuate, should a note be left on the door?
Door or window?
I would not recommend leaving any notes in the door or window. As you mentioned, it could invite people that you don't want around to know what you did. Regardless of if there's a note or not, we're still going to make contact at the front door, see if you guys are there, see if you're leaving and what your plans are. And then we have our own internal way of marking the property to say who's leaving, who's staying, what's going on.
Second question is, I followed TOPO and the LLT maps arcs to see where the fire is progressing, but I have no way, even your map up there or at the fill-up, to tell me actual mileage. I'm guessing it's like 10.5 from my house, but I have no way of knowing exact mileage to Old Station. Is there a way to have that posted?
Okay, so on the bottom of the maps, there's actually a measurement tool that shows mileage, okay, and shows distance. So you can measure that and then line it out on the map and it'll show you the mileage. But just to put this in perspective, I talked about 550,000 acres, 490 miles around the perimeter of this fire. This map right here is the same size map we use on a 50,000 acre fire, 10,000 acre fire, 5,000 acre fire. That's a standard map size that we use. Think about this. 5,000 acre fire looks the same on a map because we zoom in more, right? It's the same size map. This map right here shows basically from below Magalia all the way up here to Old Station. That's what this looks like right now, all the way out past 395. The magnitude of trying to portray how big this incident is on a piece of paper is very difficult. I know for me, driving just through the middle of this fire, it's almost 2.5 hours on highways. On highways. That's just the size and complexity that we're dealing with, that our firefighters deal with every day. So yes, you can use the scale at the bottom. I'm sorry, that's the best I can do. Some of the mapping programs online that you can see some of the heat signatures, and I want to emphasize something. I know a lot of people look at that information on there. When you see that red and you see a sphere out of significant heat, remember that's a 1 mile center node. So off the point in the middle, it's a half mile in all direction circle. That heat signature could be anywhere in that 1 mile. It's not just right there because it's from satellite. It's not pinpoint, okay? And also, that could be picked up in the smoke itself, and we call that reflective heat, that it picks up and reflects on the IR information that we get. So we have to validate that information every time we get it to ensure it's accurate, as much accuracy as possible without physically taking steps around it with a GPS.
All right. Do we have any more questions from this side of the room? I just want to give an opportunity, and then what we'll probably do is kind of wrap it up, but we aren't going anywhere. We are here for you folks to answer your questions. Obviously, we have our different representatives, but yes, sir, go ahead with your question, please.
I've been trying to keep up with this thing and listen to the local news, Reading, Chico, wherever it comes from. I don't know the best way to get real good instant information. In other words, the last hour. It's 12 hours old, 24 hours old sometimes. So how do you get the best information?
Well, the way as far as the updates pertaining to like growth, size, containment, we get that intel in the morning at 7 a.m. and then we produce those deliverables. And so we work off of those throughout the course of the day in terms of updating. We do we're currently conducting radio interviews in Susanville. We give those to our folks that we spoke of earlier, where we're sending them out to your communities and your neighborhoods to post that information up. And then as additional information comes in, we try to do news releases or press releases as well. Right now with, I believe it's JDX down in Susanville, we're set up to do a 7:45 interview, and then usually we're doing a 12 noon as well as a 5 p.m. So we're trying to keep that information caught up, and then we get more information from the operational components, such as Chief Bohall. That comes in, and then we get information, and then we redistribute that in the evening as well.
It sounds like there's going to be a big delay to me. We're in a black hole here electronically. I don't get a radio station from Susanville. I couldn't pay for that. So anyway, when the evacuation order does come in the morning, is there going to be information about what highways to use at that time? And how is that decided?
Yes, sir. Sheriff, would you like to speak on behalf as far as notifications and how that traffic plan will go?
Yeah, so if you don't have a way of receiving our code red or our EAS, when we come knock on your door and tell you that it's time to evacuate, we will tell you the best route to evacuate. We'll also tell you where any evacuation shelters are that you can respond to if needed. So we will tell you which way to go.
Okay, I was here in 2009. I was here in 2012. In 2009, I think there was a mandatory evacuation. Nobody ever came to my ranch and told me to evacuate. So I decided that on my own. Nobody ever notified me. So I'm just wondering how that's done. What is this information red you talked about?
Code red. So basically you sign up with your cell phone, and then if evacuation...
The cell phone that doesn't work at my house, that one?
Right. That's why we try to back up these evacuation orders with door-to-door advisements. What's that? Yes, landline. If you have a landline, your phone subscriber should automatically sign you up for EAS alerts.
Here's Rhonda.
Okay, I have a business here in Hat Creek, and the way the fires are going, it's wiping me out. I want to know, Ms. Ricker, where's my funding going to come from to help support my business? And I have nothing to do with COVID at this point. Because I'm usually packed full, and I've got maybe 7 trailers in a 75 park. Plus a restaurant and a school. So I'm used to my house ticket. All right. Plus I want to know too, is usually our park is utilized from forestry, Cal Fire, the wildland firefighters, anybody who come in and camp and stay with us. We haven't had anybody. Can you tell me why?
So the question is utilization of your facility to assist with logistics support for the fire?
Well, we've had the firefighters stay there because we have a shower, laundry, restaurant, all that there, and we haven't had anybody.
Yeah, and at this point, what we're looking at, and you heard that we do the scouting components out just for forecasting. Right now, what we're dealing with is as Chief C mentioned, the size of this fire, so a lot of it pertains to just travel distance at this point.
Well, I see a lot of fire trucks down in Reading, Red Bluff, everywhere. They're traveling over an hour away to get sleep. Why aren't they staying closer where they can have more sleep, more rest?
Well, ma'am, I could take that question back and talk to our folks that are working with the facilities as far as making those arrangements and logistics. And we can tie in afterwards, and I can get you that information and help provide a result. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Let me get the microphone to you so that way we can capture.
see a sign that says, entering Lassen National Park. National Park is a federal, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so where's your federal help? I mean, bring a Chinook in, grab a D9, and drop it on top of an inaccessible area, okay? Where's the National Guard? You got 6,600 people working their butts off, and you need federal help, and it's a federal national park. I'm within the national park. I live out on Wilcox Road. This goes for the sheriff. My second is I have one way in, one way out. Okay, I'm on Wilcox and I'm in the middle of the park. How much time do we have before I get trapped?
So the first question is, we have fire in a federal park, where is the federal assistance? Okay, let's break this down, and Chief C.
All right, so we have many federal resources assigned to the incident, and you asked about the California National Guard. Currently, we have 12 20-person hand crews assigned to this incident. Just came in 2 days ago from the California National Guard with line supervision from CAL FIRE. We also have numerous California National Guard, both rotor wing helicopters and fixed wing airplanes flying on this incident. The issue with our fixed wing, our airplanes, has been the smoke conditions and having the safe airspace to be able to utilize those. But our helicopters have been utilized daily out here, and that's including National Guard folks. Additionally, there were 75 National Guard personnel that were mission tasked by the Plumas County Sheriff's Department for security duty on their road closures and checkpoints. So we do have numerous National Guard involved from California. The California National Guard has to be utilized before the federal Army crews can be activated. So that's just step one in a long process of activating those. Yes. Yeah, the training aspect of it that we utilize for the National Guard, they go through a quick, rudimentary 1-week firefighting training program, and then they're utilized out on the fire line with supervision from CAL FIRE.
Hey, Joe, just want to step in and say that there is an east zone on this fire, and that is a federal incident management team. And so, and both of these teams are unified and working together. It doesn't matter which land it is, if it's BLM, Park Service, state land, private land, we're all working together to put those resources in the best places that we can put them. So there are federal resources here, there are county resources here, there are state resources here, there are military resources here, and we are all working together, like we've been trying to say, to do this. So you may not see as much the briefings from the east side on this, from the information getting out here, but there is a federal team on the Dixie also. So there's 2 Type 1 teams fighting this fire.
Alrighty, folks. So with that, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be around here at the conclusion of this. If you have any more questions, please feel free to come up to us. As a reminder, we do have the literature. A couple questions came up pertaining Code Red for Shasta County. We'd be happy to help you over to the table to my right. As a reminder, tomorrow, Sunday, August 16th, we'll be doing another broadcast for those of you that are able to grab that off of Facebook and YouTube. We're constantly to keep up. We are going to be producing those every other night just to keep you informed. Obviously, we're using multiple social media platforms. And again, we've got folks in the field. Please feel free to come up to them and ask any questions. But as of right now, we will be here for you and happy to answer any additional questions or provide information. I also want to thank the Chief for Shasta County Fire for providing us this opportunity to use this building and bring us collectively together to provide this information. Folks, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming out. And again, thank you on behalf of everyone here on the Dixie Fire.
Thank you, guys.